After Nike CEO John Donahoe announced his retirement last night, the stock roared today, and for good reason. Donahoe never made sense as the CEO of a sneaker company, let alone the largest sneaker company in the world. But he was a long-standing board member of Nike, who I'm sure contributed a great deal in that role. Problem is, he was a consulting guy who made the switch to tech about 20 years ago, coming to Nike by way of ServiceNow, PayPal, eBay, and originally Bain & Company. You see, that's not the resume of someone who should be entrusted with one of our national icons, Nike. As we know from Shoe Dog, the terrific autobiography by Nike founder Phil Knight, you had to be a sneakerhead or an athlete who played, or both, in order to run this business. Donahoe seemed to be devoid of these characteristics. He's suave, but they would have been better off with someone modeled off the late, great Steve Prefontaine, the legendary distance runner who was the first athlete to sign with Nike way back in the early 70s. Here's something ironic. When Donahoe took over at ServiceNow, the cloud software firm, in 2017, outgoing CEO Frank Slootman raved about him. Quote, John's extensive track record of creating value, driving innovation, and scaling a large technology organization will be critical as we continue to move ServiceNow up the enterprise value chain, end quote. It's true, he was a great fit at that enterprise software company, but it turned out to be a bizarre, oddly truncated launching pad on Donahoe's way to the top job of Nike in January 2020. Donahoe from ServiceNow to Nike? But a few months later, COVID went on to swamp Nike's operations, making the company less beholden to mall-based retailers, like the 2,500 stores controlled by Foot Locker. Nike tended to view these stores, frankly, as too downscale. They were anxious to premiumize the brand. So why not go all in on direct consumer? Yes, digital direct sales, with a tech guy who must know it, right? He came from ServiceNow. Unfortunately, Donahoe did it too well. When the pandemic ended, Nike had the finest direct-to-consumer technology around. But people didn't want it as much. Two problems. One, after we beat COVID, people returned to the mall in droves. Nike had gone all in on digital, though, so during that period, On Holding, Deckers, which is Hoka's, Adidas, even Vans took critical shelf space in these mall-based stores. You started seeing New Balance everywhere. At the same time, we started hearing that Nike's innovation pipeline, at one time the envy of the industry, was drying up. Donahoe was adopting old models, previous incarnations that had been successful, and somehow he actually seemed to be proud of that. To which I say, what was Nike thinking? How could they have squandered this great job on someone who understood how to improve corporate onboarding and IT ticketing, but not how to sell brand new inventive shoes and not just the recycled old ones? His skill sets had nothing to do with running Nike. Of course, that's the fault of the board, not of the man. I personally wouldn't have picked someone who was so willing to leave ServiceNow after only 3 years on the job. Bill McDermott replaced Donahoe over there and promptly took the stock from 240s to more than 930 today. Donahoe took over Nike, and its stock proceeded to do nothing, with his tenure seeing no increase in the stock price. That's amazing when you remember that the S&P 500 is up over 80% during the same period. Near the end of his tenure, he finally made amends with Foot Locker and repaired a lot of the relationships he helped destroy. But it didn't work in time. Nike's rivals, they had caught up to it, and in many cases surpassed it. I think there's a real cautionary tale here. Luxman Narasimhan, late of Starbucks, had many of the characteristics of Donahoe. He was known as a management consultant, not a coffee person. Frankly, it would have been better to bring in a good hospitality executive or someone who could help draw a heart at the top of a cup of Joe, foam cappuccino. Again, the stock reflected that fact until he finally got ousted, which is what really matters here. Memo to the boards of directors out there, there are grades in this business. The stock market gives them. Donahoe got a gentleman's C, but Nike deserved an A student. Now maybe they'll get one. My advice, go with what Starbucks did. Find the equivalent of a Brian Niccol, late of Chipotle, someone steeped in food and marketing who knows how to make things fresh and loved by all. I like to say there's always a bull market somewhere, and I promise I'll find it just for you right here on Mad Money. I'm Jim Cramer. See you next time.